The first 5 years of life are the fastest period of human growth and development, as 90% of a person's brain development occurs by the age of 5. Parents, we have some work to do. I'm Dr. Nefertiti Pointer, a first-time mom at the age of 41, with over 2 decades of experience as a teacher, speaker, and researcher in the fields of early care and education and adult well-being. Welcome to a space for moms who are raising children prenatal through age 8. You're not alone, and we will do this together, just as soon as I can find my glasses. Madison, have you seen my glasses?
No. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey there, welcome to the podcast. I am your host, Dr. Nefertiti Pointer, the geriatric mama. Geriatric, not the term I've given myself, the term the medical field has given me, because doggone it, I had the nerve to intentionally have a baby after 35. Way after 35, 41 even, and no regrets, living my best life. And I'm using this podcast space to just talk a little bit about what I've learned over the 8 years, because at the time of this recording, Madison is almost 9, so we share what we're learning raising our 9-year-old. But I'm also a bonus mom, and so we've learned some things through that. And I also am a teacher. I'm a researcher, and I spend my days looking at how to raise resilient children, and we're using this space to not only couple what I see in the research around raising resilient children, but also what I see in the Bible about raising healthy children, mind, body, and spirit. I believe when you put those two things together, it can be amazing. And so welcome to the podcast. If you're listening to me in an audio format, that is wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. I want you to also know we also roll over on Amazon. Yeah, we're going to roll over on Amazon too, but we also roll over here on YouTube. And so, again, thank you for listening wherever you're listening from and however you are listening. Welcome to the podcast. Mommy Mess Up, number 1,340,071. Nefertiti, are you really counting your mistakes? No! But I figure it's about 1 million mistakes, because mamas, we are going to make mistakes. But listen to me. This one, and if you're listening to me in audio, there's nothing wrong. I'm still here. I was so mad at myself when I did this, because I know better. I know better. I may have said this before in another one of my podcasts. At the time of today's recording, our 8-year-old is not reading at grade level. And a few weeks ago, I was talking to my mom, and my mom was like, Nefertiti, sometimes you have to stop being the teacher, Nefertiti, and you just need to be Madison's mom. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. And so some days I do get very worried that, listen, she's doing so much better. So shout out to Madison. I mean, she's doing so much better. And her efforts toward all of her, what we're asking her to do has been phenomenal. So shout out to that little girl. And I do worry. I mean, it's 3rd grade. You know what they say about 3rd and 4th graders and their reading levels. Like, it has everything to do with so much of what is ahead. So if I'm being fully transparent, there are some days that my stomach starts to hurt and I get worried. And this mistake I made was one of those days. Had a long day this day. We were getting ready to do homework in the way we normally do. And she said something to me. I don't even remember exactly what she said, but she said something to me that made me, let me take that back. Her statement didn't make me, because nobody makes me do anything. I allowed it to make me. You hear how I caught myself? It's not fair to say my child made me say that, or my child made me do that. No, ma'am. And no, sir, if you're happening to listen today and you're a fella. No, ma'am, no, sir. Our children don't make us do anything. I allowed that statement to get into the statement and behavior Madison was presenting. I allowed it to get in my spirit. And I said back to her. And once again, there's no audio challenges. I'm still here. But again, I can't believe I even did this. I said to her, if you don't get this right, mommy's going to have to make you repeat the third grade. Do you want that? And you might be saying, well, Nefertiti, she might have to repeat the third grade if she doesn't get it right. And you're right. And you may even say, Nefertiti, your feelings are, you're worried. So what's wrong with what you said? Here's the question, Mom. Is anything about my statement helpful? Sitting at your desk during the day thinking, if I don't get this right, my mom is going to keep me back. Is that helpful? And to that mom, and that might be saying, well, yes, Nefertiti, because it could be motivation. I got you. And I think a tiny bit of that is correct. And what I am, and I mean a tiny, you know what? I take that back. In full transparency, and it's again today why we have today's podcast. I absolutely believe that sometimes a child understanding what the ramifications of behavior may look like, that will change the way they do things. But as an 8-year-old, and that's why, again, in 2023, I am changing the way we narrate this podcast, because older children, absolutely understanding what the ramifications of behavior are may help them get it back together and stay and know how to set better goals for themselves. Because my daughter is 8, she does not need the pressure of mommy saying to me, I'm going to be left back. That's not what she needs. And so the mommy mistake that I made is I didn't speak life into her. I scared her. I made her worried. I put doubt in her spirit. And that is not what we want to do as parents. And so I want you to just give me a little bit of time today to unfold some ideas together about how to speak life into our children. That's really what I was going to call today's podcast, but I was like, maybe nobody's going to listen if I say speak life. So I instead said the mistake I made, and that's true. It is a mistake. And with my mistake, I am learning to do better, because listen, all mistakes are just opportunities to say, what can I do better? And here I am at my 1 million mommy mistake. And I want to, again, maybe relabel today's podcast, Speak Life into Our Children, particularly during the difficult times, particularly during the times where you're like, you know those times? Well, today we're going to talk about those times. Remember in podcast number 2. Podcast number 1 was our introductory podcast where I talked about talking with children, young children, about how to handle death. If you haven't checked that one out, make sure you check that one out. But number 2, our second podcast, talked about good self-care for moms, because self-care has everything to do with how you respond to the ups, the downs, and in betweens as a parent. But this day, again, if I'm being fully transparent, nothing about Madison's behavior warranted what I said to her. Nothing. Does any 8-year-old sit down with eagerness and joy? Yes, let's do homework, Mom. Yes. No. Not many. I'm not gonna say no 8-year-old, but not many 8-year-olds. But boy, I had one of those days. And because I was having one of those days, I said something to her that I really did not want to say. And you know what I did? I apologized to her. And I explained to her that there is no reason for mommy to say what I said to you today. And I also use it as an opportunity to be transparent with her about our efforts, because I don't want to scare her. I don't want to have her have any doubt in her response in what she has to do, because moms, our children see themselves in the reflection back in our eyes. And we have to mirror back to them power and possibility, and you can do this. We have to mirror that back in both our eyes and in the words that we say. You know, Madison likes to use the word ancestors, right? And I always make sure she understands everything that we have and everything we are yet to become. We owe a lot to our ancestors, right? And so I say to her, like, listen, today is Thursday and everything you want is right out in this world. There are going to be things that you have to do to get those, but you have possibilities. You have a space in your life where your goals and dreams can become actionable steps for the rest of your life. And I remember once listening to Michelle Obama talk about having children say what you want to be when you grow up. It was actually Barack Obama's, either his one of his inauguration speech or something leading up, was the first time I had, with an earnest ear, been able to listen to somebody talk to everybody about the entrepreneurial life, right? Many of us we were taught to grow up, get a job, get a good education, or as they say down in some places, get you a good old edumacation, right? Get you a good old edumacation. But get a good education, get out there and get a job, and life is going to be wonderful. No. No. It was, again, in former President Barack Obama's speech where he talked about being an entrepreneur. And so you can grow, you can certainly advance your education, and you can have a dream of being an entrepreneur. But what are we going to do today, 8-year-old, to make sure that happens? And then Michelle Obama, when she was on tour for her book, Becoming, she said, let's stop asking children what you want to be when you grow up. Because asking that question means it's like one thing, I want to be this. I say to Madison, what are you going to do to change the world? That's what I say to her. What do you want to do as you grow into a young person, an older person, that's going to change the world? I don't use language of occupations around here. We use language of occupations. Yes, there's no occupation, there is an occupation. And I'm saying all of this to say how we speak to our children, especially this birth to 8 age, is going to impact the rest of their lives. And so here I am in Mommy Mistake 1,000,000 something. But we're going to use this podcast space to think about how best to do this. And again, we're not going to check off all the buttons today, but again, starting a conversation where you can continue it where you are about how to speak life into our children. Again, I see everywhere in the research about how important it is to speak positively to children. You will not always see terminology that says speak life into our babies, but I love that strong language, because anytime you are feeling like you want to say something that is not going to be so helpful, I want you to remember to speak life. I said those things to Madison out of a place of being tired and overwhelmed, and she didn't deserve it. But if I can remind you, those of us, again, who adhere to the teachings of the Bible, Ephesians 4:29, and I want us to listen to this because, again, think about what we say to our children. Don't let any unwholesome thoughts come out of your mouth. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building children up. The Bible doesn't say children, but today, if it be okay, Lord, I'm changing the word a little bit, but only what is helpful for building your children up according to their needs. That afternoon, when my 8-year-old was sitting at the table, she needed me to say, I know you don't always want to do homework, but it's a wonderful opportunity for us to practice. Speak life. My 8-year-old didn't want to do her homework, but it's a wonderful opportunity to say, all right, we're going to set our timer for 25 minutes. And after our 25 minutes, we're going to have we're going to do some dancing in between, because that gets her excited. But again, Ephesians 4:29 says, build others up according to their needs. When your child is acting that way, what do they need? Respond to the need and speak life. And then finally, that it may benefit those who listen. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. All right. And again, we're not here to have a Sunday morning sermon, although we can do that if you want to. What we are here to do is to make sure we are speaking life into our babies. So let me give you a few ideas to think about, and then again, we'll see each other in our next podcast, okay? First thing I want you to think about when you're speaking life into your babies is I want you to be specific. I want you to be specific. See, As you speak life into your four babies, each of them has a God-given talent, strength, personality. And remember, I said a moment ago, they are looking in your eyes and listening to your words to mirror back who they are. And so when you say, good job, I love, that's not enough. I want you to be really specific. So again, if I can use Madison for example, Madison has such a way with both babies and animals, right? She sometimes, when she's in the company of a baby that she seems to be able to soothe, she calls herself the baby whisperer. But when she's also with animals, she has a way of just getting everybody calm. Now, again, it could be an emerging strength. We don't know yet. But when I'm speaking life into her, I can say, Madison, you have such a way of being so patient with both children and animals. I can't wait to see what you do to influence the world with that skill. See the difference in what I just said? And again, sometimes I think people will say, well, Nefertiti, you want me to say all that all the time? I didn't say that. I didn't say it. But it took me not even 15 seconds to do what I just did. Is your baby not worth 15 seconds? All right. Again, let's say you have a child who is super wonderful at problem solving. Mirror back that for them when I say be specific. Again, get really animated, particularly in this young age. How'd you do that? How did you even figure that out? You need a YouTube channel. Let me record this and figure out how we can get you to help the other people who don't know how to use it. Like, again, give it back to them in amazing ways. You have a child who's a wonderful athlete. Be, again, specific, because it's not that you score such great many points, son or daughter. It's the fact that you have been practicing and that you are a great team member and that you're a great leader and that you're a great listener. Do you see where we're going with this? You have to speak life and be specific. Once again, if I go back to podcast number 2, some of us and somebody listening to the podcast today, you already know how important it is to do what I just said. One of the reasons why you don't always do it, however, is because you're tired. And I'm going to ask you to do whatever you can to make sure you stay in a place where you can speak life into your children. And one of the strategies I'm asking you to think about today is to be specific. At the time of this recording, that big cruise ship from Carnival Cruise, whatever, I think it's called Icon of the Sea. It's going out today or this weekend. And we had said to Madison, when she turns double digits, we'll see if we can get a cruise somewhere in the year that she turns double digits, which happens to be in 2 years. So double digits, we're going to have to start saving for some of the things that she wants to do, right? But she's like, Mom, I want to get on that. I want to get on that. And you know how we always talk about when you have big aspirations, you have to plan for those things. So she already knew. But my second thing that I want us to do as we speak life into our children is make it big, y'all. Elevate the expectation on what they feel they can do and become. So when I was a little girl, I used to love to sketch. Y'all remember, some of y'all so young, you don't even remember. And if you listen to me on audio, you can't see me, but I'm trying to do an example over here in YouTube land. Remember that sketchy thing? Like it came in pieces like this and you could put them together and then you had a piece of crayon, you did like that. Remember that thing? It wasn't called Etch-a-Sketch. It was maybe called Design Sketch or something, right? You could put it all together and then you sketch it. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Shake your head. Okay, shake your head. Okay. Anyway, when you finish, you had a sketch of a design, and you could change the skirt, you could change the shoes. I loved that thing, and I thought, I was like, next time I did it, I just got a pencil and paper, and I was sketching stuff out. You couldn't tell me I wasn't doing something. You could not tell me I was not going to be the next. I don't even know who the best is, who's out here now, whatever designers. You couldn't tell me that wasn't going to be me. And then one day, my mom was looking at my drawing and she said, oh, T, this is nice. She said, this is nice. She said, you're going to design for plus size people? I ain't even, what you talking about, Mom? Well, maybe the all of my dresses had a Cinderella bottom, or maybe the arm flat was too big. I don't know what my mama was saying really, but here's what my mama did. Whether I was going to be a teacher, whether I was going to be a fashion designer, whether I was going to be a photographer, whether I was going to be whatever that thing was, my mother made it feel like it was possible. My mother made it feel like it was possible. She never said, Nefertiti, you may not be able to do that because of that. Or Nefertiti, you may not be able to do that because of that. My mother spoke life into her children in very common, loving ways. And that's why we're having today's podcast. The world outside of some of our doors will tell our children that they can't be this or they can't do that because of their zip code, their family makeup, the color of their skin. And I don't care right now about everything else everybody else says. We're going to deal with that because we do have to continue to deal with that. But where your power lies, Mom, is to every day remember to speak life into your children. And first, I asked you to be specific. Secondly, I said, allow them to dream big and help them understand some of the steps that are going to have to be there. But put no limits on the things they want to do and become and to contribute to this world. That's what we're talking about today when we talk about speaking life. My last two ideas, I'm actually going to put them together because I think they kind of go together. I want you to tell them and show them how. When you're speaking life into your babies, I want you to tell them and show them how they can be everything that they want to be. All right. So for example, when I was a preschool teacher, and I love pre-K students. Pre-K students are my favorite. I love 4 and 5-year-olds and those babies that are transitioning over to kindergarten. And so in my classroom, my babies wrote an autobiography. They did that. We had a museum where when it was time for us to tour Africa, we had a museum and we did all kind of tangible things. And you had to have a ticket because after we did everything, you had to come to our classroom and you had to have a ticket to come to our museum. We all had passports because one time they were talking to me about we used to walk to the train station or around a corner from where my center was. And one day I said to the children, "Where do you think the train is going today?" And one day, one of my babies said, "This train is going to Paris." Well, this subway ain't going to Paris. And you're going to need a few trains, airplanes, and a few other things to get to Paris. But now that you talk about it, let's talk about Paris. And we did a whole unit on Paris, and we had to have passports to go, and it was a joy. But I want to think with you about this. Tell and show your baby what is out there for them. So if we can take, for example, again, what do you want to be when you grow up? Let's say your baby says, "I want to be an astronaut." All right, maybe a good idea would be to take a picture of their face and then Photoshop it onto an astronaut's body and put that astronaut's body on a book cover. Listen, back in the day, what's those places called where you can go sit and have books made? I would have no paycheck. I already didn't have a paycheck as a preschool teacher, but I would have no paycheck if I was making books for my babies because I love that they always had books that featured their faces. And I love watching them read books about each other. But let's say your baby says they want to be an astronaut. You take a picture of the face. You Photoshop it onto an astronaut's body. You put it on the front of a cover. And then you narrate with your child a story that tells how you can become an astronaut. What are the steps that might be necessary to become an astronaut? You tell your baby and you show your baby how those things can come to fruition. And then your baby is forward with this book about me becoming an astronaut. And then your baby keeps reading it at 5 and at 6 and at 7 and at 8. And at 18, she's still reading it. But you spoke life into her that day she told you she wanted to be an astronaut. And you showed her how she could do that. And that's again why we're here today. We're talking about speaking life into our babies. I hope all of this has made sense so far. In 2024, I'm being a little bit more intentional about the time we spend together. I don't believe that podcasts need to take 45, 35, 45 hours when we can get the information in small bites. I think that could be better for all of us. And so today we were talking about speaking life into our babies. And I said one of the first things I want you to do is be specific. Mirror back for your babies the strengths that you see that God has given them. Then I said I want you to set no limits on the things that they say they want to do and become. Just go ahead and ask them every day, what do you want to do to contribute to this world to make it a better place? That may be the question you ask instead of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And remember, there are no occupations around here. It's all occupations. And as your baby is growing and developing, show and tell them how they can become who they want to become. Tell them and show them how. And just a few minutes ago, I just gave you a quick example of maybe a book that you could write and do together so that it can be something tangible they can hold on to. But if I can, I want to also go back to how I started today's podcast. And I told you I'm on mommy mistake number 1 million, blah, 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 blah. That afternoon that I said those things to Madison, it was because I was tired and I was overwhelmed. And you're going to have days when you feel like that. And so today, in today's show notes, whether you're listening on YouTube or if you're on in an audio format, I put together just a small little resource for us called Speaking Life. Sentence starters to use to love and live and to build relationships with our babies. Sometimes when I'm not in the best place, I can get stuck and I say the first thing that I think about, and that's not always good. And so I sometimes need a sentence starter. Some of the things I can hold on to say when I want to say something that's not helpful. And so I would love for you to download a copy of the sentence starter resource that I put together for us. Again, it's in the show notes on Apple, on iTunes and Spotify, and then in YouTube, it's in our notes. It's in the comment section. Okay. Don't let you get in the way of speaking life into your children. Does that make sense? And I'm looking back at myself as I record this. Nefertiti, don't let you get in the way of speaking life into your children. All right. Again, thank you for listening. If you learned anything today, would you please like, share, comment, and make sure we are getting this podcast out to as many as we can. Remember, in the first podcast, Madison told us we're trying to go viral. I just ask that God's will be done. Those who need to hear it will need to hear it. I do ask, however, that you do what you can to help spread the message. Today we talked about speaking life into our children. And I shared with you my mommy mistake, and I'm asking you to just be careful. Don't let you get in the way of speaking life into your babies. All right, I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I'm so excited that we were able to get quiet and think about speaking more life into our children. And I say more because I know we're already doing a lot of this, and so let's keep it up. The resource that I created for us is entitled Speak Life, Sentence Starters that Speak Life and Love into Children, especially during tough times. So you can download it in the show notes, or if you're over on YouTube, down under the video, you'll find it there. Don't leave this podcast without clicking the link to get your hot little hands on this resource. And as always, I welcome your comments, your questions. We're in this together. I'm at mommy mistake number 1 million something, but today's a new day and I'm ready to speak more life. How about you? I'll talk to you on the next podcast.